which happened in 1970 and 71. And the reason it was great was because there was no real structure to do it. Betty Friedan went out of office at that point saying, we need to have a strike. Now that's the great thing to say on your way out of office. And then turn it over to somebody else who was coming in to do the planning. We had no way of doing an international strike or even a national strike for women's rights at that point. But what we said to women across the country was, do whatever you can wherever you are. And you would have been amazed to see the kinds of ideas that came up from women across the United States who didn't even know what NOW was, much less how to go about organizing it, but who had things that they wanted to say and said it in tiny little towns all over the country. This is the kind of movement I think we need to have again. The kind of movement where everybody can get back in and do what they can do on these issues that are of great importance to us. So we haven't done anything at this point in time that would suggest that we're totally successful. We have made changes in terms of women having opportunities to be decision makers. We've certainly grown in the state of California and certainly in the United States in both the Assembly and in the Senate, but other countries are far better than we are in terms of the percentage of women who are there. It is disappointing to see some of the countries that made great strides for a while going backwards again. The countries that did set up new constitutions where they recognized the past wrongs in our society and said, we're going to correct them. We're going to do certain things about them. But when they got down to doing it, they didn't do it for very long. And so even the countries that had the opportunities to have 30% or 40% of their legislatures be women found out that that didn't necessarily last for long when the men got back into power in a lot of those places. So we have to change a lot of things, and we haven't been willing to do that. Today, it seems to me, as I was looking at some of the reports coming in from New York, and I heard from Margot, who was there, that she said it was chaotic. Well, it always is. Every time you go to one of those conferences, it's chaotic, because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of women coming from all over the place. Some coming just as independent people, and others coming as representatives of their country. And some of them not even wanting to speak as representatives of their country because they don't agree with what their country is trying to do at that time. But they're coming. And it's in those conferences that you begin to meet them, and it's in the conversations that you have outside of the big forums that you begin to find the connections with other women along this line. And you also begin to find the connections with some men who also understand the necessity that this is a working process where it is not all going to be done by women. It is just not going to happen that way. So before I put you into total despair, let me also ask you to tell me what you think are some of the things where we have made significant changes that you think are okay, and we can go ahead and leave those and move on to something else. Anything.
Women, more than 50% of college graduates these days have tended to be women. Mostly white, but still.
Well, no, I think you can't say mostly white and that's still okay because it's women. We have to do the other part of that. So we have done some part of that, and we have to do the rest. One of the issues that we know that we haven't done quite as well is to get that interaction for women of all backgrounds, all races and ethnicities, all economic levels, and all the rest. That just is not happening in a lot of places. But there are more women going to colleges and doing that. Too many of them are going to law school. Yeah, because that sounds to me like the same old, same old. It's going to be the same old. It's not that I don't like lawyers. I used to say that some of my best friends were lawyers. Not a lot of them, but some of them. But I think part of it is that lawyers, to me, are very useful in a lot of ways, and I would like to see some changes made in some of our laws as a result of some of the things that are going on now. But the other part of it is lawyers tend to be confrontational. They tend even to be trained to be confrontational because you can do both things. You're supposed to be on both sides of every question as you go through. And there is a value to that, but there's also a disadvantage to that. And there are lots of other places where we need to have people who have concerns about humanity, about the humanitarian issues of our society, about our just our lives, the things that we're talking about in terms of sustainability, what we've done to our nation and the world in terms of things that have been badly used in our society. What else? What else have we done? Charlie?
I went to the conference in 1995 to China, and one of the issues I was addressing was indigenous people weren't represented at all in the UN. And since then, now they have a permanent, they don't have permanent seats, which is really unfortunate because in some countries the majority of the population, but there's a permanent committee set up. And there's two committees for indigenous people, and every continent has one representative. And so there's a mixed committee, and then there's one specific to indigenous women. And I think here in California, in 1995, the issue for indigenous people in the United States was visibility. And I think that's met. None of the problems are solved, but at least there's visibility. And people know that California has the largest population of indigenous people in the United States. And that was something that people did not know even 5 years ago.
Anybody else? Yes.
Well, two things come to my mind. One, I mean, since girls seem to be making great strides in the classrooms. Where they used to worry about girls, now they're worried about boys. And another thing I think of, I watched my daughter who has an infant son, and I remember when my children were small and I entered the workplace. You couldn't, as a woman, you had to like put your pictures away and almost pretend you didn't have children and not speak of them. And nowadays it's very common women, gladly talk about their children, and they seem to be more supportive in the workplace to be able to take time off to flex their time and that type of thing. So I think that's encouraging. I don't think we're all the way there, but I think that's encouraging.
Well, the other thing that we're not also all the way there on is to recognize that men also have those benefits.
That's true.
And essentially, one of the reasons that you had the other situation was because it was not assumed that men even wanted those benefits. And I think a lot of people are recognizing as you go forth now that by opening up opportunities for women, not only do you open them up for women, but you also open up opportunities for men who have not been very satisfied with their lives in terms of what they're supposed to be doing as men in the society.
And yesterday I was involved in a conference called Expanding Your Horizons at Seattle Valley College. It was for 5th to 8th grade girls, and all of the presenters were women, and it had all kinds of workshops for girls that was basically encouraging them to look at science, math, technology,
The things that girls could not do in the day that I was growing up.
I was a presenter when we built toolboxes.
Right.
So it was kind of a great opportunity, and you do see some of that going on with girls, more encouragement to in math and science, which they never would.
Right.
The girls in sports, I think. Certainly there was no girls rugby in college when I was younger.
Right.
By the time my daughter got there is.
As I remember, it was half-court basketball.
Yes.
That did it. The half-court basketball, I remember playing it, so that's why I remember that.
There's a lot more.
A lot more sports, and one of the issues about that
Team sports.
is a very different kind of approach. Well, number one, they're team sports, and secondly, it is talking about the physical body, not just to be as thin as you can be, but to be as healthy as you can be and to be as strong as you can be. Women can be strong just like men can be. So there are changes in that as well. What else?
Yeah, an ambiguous one, reproductive rights. In '73, we did get Roe v. Wade. And the consciousness of the nation at least became aware that this was an issue. I mean, obviously, this is a very fragile place at the moment as we speak. Tomorrow, with respect to the Senate bill and what kind of reconciliation will take place. But I think that we can't fool ourselves. At the same time, people have been able to make determinations about the numbers of children. This is different.
Why is that important?
For about 7,000 reasons. I mean, I'm not even going to go to the liberal notions of freedom of choice, but that's certainly there. But I think, and if we speak internationally, and I've lived and worked in Indonesia, where I have seen enormous changes, I mean, from 11 children to 2 or 3. That makes a difference not only in terms of poverty, but freeing up women in order to have alternative ways of expressing themselves. But it's an ambiguous one.